The early bird catches the worm. The early diver catches the fish. Being the first diver in the water for the day has a lot of advantages. Fish are generally going to be a lot more relaxed in the early hours of the morning. This one area has a huge diversity of marine life, most notably of which are Tarakihi, blue moki and Copper Moki. You can identify the Copper Moki by its black tail. It turns back and presents itself a shot for me. Perfect stone shot, no pain or suffering. That's what I'm aiming for. Shooting and killing a fish outright has many advantages, one of which is you disturb the area very little. This means that if you're diving a really specific spot where the fish can spook easily and disappear, if you get a stone shot, it can cause minimal disturbance and you can dive the spot and get another fish off there. This is the first Copper Moki that I've ever shot. They're quite rare here in the Coromandel. I do love shooting new fish and trying them out, but for these less common ones, I leave it at one. I've shot splendid perch, inscribed wrasse and bluefish, which may be a bit controversial, but I've only ever shot one and plan on leaving it at that. The fish in this area were very friendly. This seagull, however, not so much. And that'll be our cue to get out of here. Onwards and upwards, my friends, in search of new and better fish.
Yeah, no, blue moki though. Yeah.
Here in the Coromandel, there are 2 times of the year where I seem to run into a lot of John Dories. Coming out of winter, going into summer as the water's warming, and going from summer into winter as the water's cooling. Here, nice Johnny. I stab him with my gun. Unfortunately, I don't check to make sure that the flopper is engaged on the other side. As I take my eyes off him, he flaps, manages to get off. I line up, take a poor shot and miss. Out in some deeper water, I found a large school of Kohero. Underneath was a John Dory. I take a dive, heading straight towards it, trying to keep my body in line with my gun to minimize my profile. At this point, I'm swimming down as fast as I can, trying to chase it. I take a shot here. I ended up quite a bit deeper than I had initially anticipated. You need to be careful in a situation like this, when you're chasing a fish to the bottom. Only do it if you're on the start of your breath. If you're hovering mid-water for a minute, see a John Dory like that, start swimming down to the bottom and chasing it, that's when you're putting yourself in a really bad situation. Typically you're going to find John Dory associating really hard with bottom structure, things like rocks, kelp, and even on the sand sometimes. It's quite rare to see them mid-water. With a fish like a John Dory so far off the bottom, you can make some assumptions about what other fish are around. If it's putting itself in such a vulnerable position, you know there's not going to be too many large apex predators. We didn't see any sharks this day and we only saw small kingfish. One of the biggest things that I pay attention to nowadays is what the other fish are doing. If you're looking at bait fish and they're really relaxed, they're sitting high off the bottom and they'll swim straight up to you not worried, that's not necessarily a very good sign. Koheru are one of those bait fish that you can look at and get a really good idea for what's going on in the area. And of course they taste brilliant as well. My favourite way to eat them is as sashimi, and this entire fish was consumed that way. They make excellent sashimi because their flesh is very soft. However, that also means they can rip off your spear really easily if you don't get a good shot. This was the largest Kohero that I had seen all day and I took a long shot to get it. I didn't see exactly where my shaft is hit, but I can see some damage in the lower tail area. I've also strung this fish with my roller gun. This means it's on my shooting line. It has a thinner diameter than the shaft, so it's more likely to rip out. Kohero can often be quite challenging to actually land. They're not very big fish, they don't give you a big target, and if you hit them even slightly off center they can often tear themselves off. As per usual, we're going to icky this fish and then bleed it straight away to ensure top eating quality. Now that I have this fish in my hands, I can see it had been bitten on the lower tail which had healed over. Initially I had thought that this was where my spear had hit the fish. Blue maomao are one of the most common fish we encounter spearfishing here in the North Island. There aren't many places you can go and not run into a good school of them. However, they're not necessarily a very good indicator species. Oftentimes they'll be hanging out and not associating with other fish. While they don't present much of a challenge, they are still great eating fish. Excellent sashimi in my opinion. Here I try to stab one without shooting my gun. I was inspired by Charlie. He had done it just a few minutes ago. I heard the commotion and came to see what all the fuss was about. I decided to have a crack at it myself. My idea was to position myself with my gun facing this rock, waiting for a mama to swim between me and the rock through the channel, lunge out and get a stab into him. As there is no footage of me succeeding, you can guess how that went. Here's Charlie loading my gun out of the water. I gave it to him for a try. We're back in again, gonna do some more weedline diving here. My personal goal today was to shoot a Tarakihi.
Oh, it's a Tarakihi.
Oh yeah, did it have a black spot on it? Yeah, bro.
Fucking gone.
As soon as I hit the bottom on this dive, I know that this one is gonna be the one. I find Tarakihi love to hang out around this seagrass type stuff. I dust up a little cloud and look around scanning. You have a small field of view when you're diving, so you gotta be looking around. From the corner of my eye, I spot what I've came here for. A Tarakihi, a North Island coromandel Tarakihi. And it does everything it's meant to. Swims straight out in front of me and presents me with a perfect shot. However, despite this, sometimes the easiest shots are the hardest, and I aim really high, only just nicking the fish. I initially try swimming down my rig line to catch this fish without putting too much pressure, but when you're down at a reasonable depth you can't spend too much time swimming around after a fish. It's a lot easier to deal with it at the surface, however you gotta be careful it doesn't pull out. There I try signal to Charlie to put in a second shot, probably just so I was giving him the peace sign. When you're pulling in one of those fish that's just hanging on by a thread, it can be nerve-wracking. You hold on a little bit too hard and that fish is gone, straight to the bottom, never to be seen again. You've injured a beautiful animal, maimed it, potentially killed it as a result, and then lost it. However, this time, managed to get the fish into my hands. Couldn't be happier. Really lucky that this one worked out. Tarakihi tastes excellent. As of many fish that I shoot, this one shared the similar fate of being my sashimi. Excellent flavour, excellent texture. Tarakihi are very residential fish. This means they often pick a specific location and spend most of their lives there. This means they can get cleared out of a single area really easily. If you know a spot where Tarakihi are, take it upon yourself, look after it. Don't tell too many people. I've deliberately made finding the location of this video harder. Today's sustainability message is protect spots, make sure they don't get cleaned out.